Hello class, it's Mr. Calvin here again, and today we will be looking at multi-step equations. And you're probably wondering, well, what does that involve? Well, in the previous lessons, we looked at the various one-step equations and how to solve them, as well as two-step equations. So we're now going to see what happens when we have to do more than two steps when we're given an equation. So some of the things we're going to look at, we're going to see a combination again, just like we did the previous lesson, with regards to what happens when we have fractions or when we have numbers attached to a variable. But we're also going to see what happens when we have things like brackets and when we have letters or variables on both sides of the equal sign. So all that is what we're going to cover for today. Okay, so let's take a look at multi-step equations and see how we can approach questions that require two or more different steps in order to solve. So, like I said, what we're going to look at here is we're going to see how we can solve for equations when we have different scenarios, especially when we have multiple terms. Okay, so what we're going to see in one of the examples is we're going to see for the first time what happens when we have x's on both sides of the equal sign. And we're going to see how to gather them in a fashion using the operations that we did in the previous lesson here. We're also going to revisit the distributive property. The only difference is now after we distribute, we will need to solve for the letter that we need to solve for. So a lot of stuff that we are going to do in this lesson we have covered already, but just taken into a new context. And we're also going to revisit how to perform a left side, right side check, but this time we're going to do it for more complex equations to see how you can approach a check in order to see whether your answer is correct or not. So let's take a look at the first example here. And what we want to do here, as you can see with these two questions, if you take a look at both questions here, what we have here are variables or letters on both sides of the equal signs as well as numbers. Now, the easiest way to do this, okay, is to gather the letters on one side and the numbers to the other, okay? And the way I teach this here is there's a lot of people that understand when they're reading math, it's easier for them to read from left to right. Okay, and that's a way I'm going to show it. In class, I'm also going to show you alternative ways in order for you to do that. So, starting off the first one here, what I want to do here is I'm going to put the x's on the left side. Now, you notice I have the 5x already on the left side, so I'm going to leave that where it is. So what I'm going to do first here, I'm going to take the 3x, okay, and I'm going to move the other side and subtract it from the 5x that's already there. And we're subtracting it because the value of that 3x is positive. So what we have on the left side here is 5x minus 3x. So that's our first thing. Now, what I want to do here, if I want the letters on the left, then I want the numbers to the right. So what we're going to do here, we're going to take this 4, and we're going to subtract it from the 16 that's already on the right side. Now, you notice I'm using boxes and arrows to show you exactly where those numbers or terms need to go on the respective sides. Okay? Now, if you see it here, we now have all the letters to the left and numbers to the right. So our last set of steps here is just to simplify. So 5x minus 3x is 2x, 16 minus 4 will give me 12. Now, as you can see here, the 2 and the x are grouped together by multiplication. So what we need to do in our final step is to divide both sides by the coefficient, which in this case here is 2. And this will give me a final answer here of x is equal to 6. All right, so same thing for part B. Notice we have a negative 3x minus 7 on the left and an 8x plus 15 on the right. So just like the previous question, we want all the letters to the left and numbers to the right. Starting off with the variables or letters, we're going to take this 8x over here, and we're going to move it to the other side and then subtract it from the negative 3x that's already there. Now, you notice when I'm moving terms around, I always write it after the term that's already on that respective side there. So when I take this negative 7 and then move it to the other side and add it to the 15, I'm going to write that 7 after the 15 that's already there. Okay, and don't forget any term that moves to the other side of the equal sign always changes to the opposite sign. Okay, and then from here we just simplify. Negative 3x minus 8x gives me negative 11x. 15 plus 7 gives me 22. Okay, divide both sides by the coefficient here of negative 11 because that's the number that's attached to the x. And this will give us a final answer here of x is equal to negative 2. So as you can see here, these two questions, exact same steps. The only obvious difference here are the numbers and the final answers. All right, now for this one over here, the only difference with this one here compared to the previous one is the fact that I just changed the location for the x's. but that doesn't change the technique. So we have 7 minus 9x on the left, and we have negative 11 minus 3x on the right. So just like the previous examples, we're going to take the letters to the left and numbers to the right. So we're going to take this negative 3x here, and it's going to go to the other side and then add itself to the negative 9x that's already there. Okay, so don't forget the negative that you see, okay, is attached to that 9x. So just make sure you just remember that as you're rewriting the equation. Now you can take a look at this 7 over here. This 7 is now going to go to the other side and subtract itself from the negative 11 that's already there. Okay, so I've manipulated the two terms there in one step here, just to show you that you can do two steps in the one step there, but there's really two steps that happen. And then negative 9x plus 3x gives me negative 6x. Negative 11 minus 7 gives me negative 18. And divide both sides by negative 6 because that's the coefficient. And this will give me an answer here. X is equal to 3. Okay, so again, anytime you see letters on both sides of the equal sign, gather the letters to the left and numbers to the right. Okay, and then from there, simplify and solve. All right, moving forward. Okay, next set of examples we're going to see is we're going to revisit the distributive property, because that's what we need to do when we solve equations that have brackets in them. So for this one over here, what we have here is 6 and in brackets x plus 3 minus 4 and in brackets x minus 1 equals 32. Now what we want to do here is to distribute the numbers that are in front of the brackets, and you're going to see that once we do that, we're actually going to visit something else that we saw from the previous chapter, which involves collecting like terms. So let's see what happens here. So we're multiplying the 6 to the x and the 6 to the 3. So that gives me 6x plus 18. And we're going to take this negative 4 multiplied to the x and take this negative 4 and multiply it to negative 1. And again, just as a reminder, when you multiply a negative number to another negative number, they'll result in a positive number. So that will give me negative 4x plus 4, and we bring back the 32. Now, before we start moving things around here, what we want to do on the left side is to simplify it by collecting like terms. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take the 6x and the negative 4x. Okay, we're not moving them to the other side. We're just going to group them together so we can organize our information. Okay, 6x minus 4x, and then 18 and 4 are going to go together. Okay, and again, I just put them side by side so you can see what we need to put together here. Okay, the 6x minus 4x gives me 2x. 18 plus 4 gives me 22, and we bring back the 32. Now, from this point, okay, we basically have to do a two-step solution to solve for this problem. So you leave that 2x exactly where it is. So what needs to move? Well, the 22 needs to go to the other side and then subtract itself from the 32. Okay, and that will give me 10. And remember, when you have a number and a letter grouped together, they're grouped together by multiplication. So we perform the opposite of that by division. So we divide both sides by the coefficient here, which cancels it out, gives us the final answer here of x is equal to 5. So as you can see in this problem over here, the main thing I want you to see, again, you need to distribute the term to the terms inside the brackets, okay? And where required, you just need to gather the like terms, simplify, and solve. Now, to do the check for this one, well, again, we're going to break it up according to the left side and right side. So the left side is the entire left side of the equal sign, which is the stuff in the brackets there, and the right side is 32. Now what we're going to do here is that anywhere we see an x, we're going to substitute the 5 in for that and see whether our left side and right side are the same. Okay, so by doing that, I put in the 5 in for the x, and I'm going to simplify, and sure enough, we have the 32 on the left side to be equal to 32 on the right side. So that's how I know, or how we know our answer is correct. All right, next part over here, same thing. Okay, notice we not only do we have two brackets, but notice we also have variables, specifically the letter x on both sides of the equal sign. So we're going to basically combine everything that we have learned up until this point. So we're going to take this negative 2, multiply it to the x, the negative 2 multiply it to this positive 1. So that gives me negative 2x minus 2. Okay, on the right side, we're going to multiply the 4 to the 2x and the 4 to the negative 3. So that will give me 8x minus 12, and then bring back the 30. Now, the left side is completely fine, so we're not going to touch that. However, on the right side, we can still simplify that further because notice we have two numbers on the right side, so we're going to collect the terms on the right side first. Okay, so if you take a look at the negative 12 and the 30 on the right side, we're just going to add those together. So negative 12 plus 30 will give me plus 18. Now from here, we now have an x on both sides of the equal sign as well as a number. So let's take care of the x's first. And remember what we want to do here is to group the letters to the left and the numbers to the right. So starting off with 8x, it's going to go to the other side and then subtract itself from the negative 2x that's already there. We take this negative 2, moves to the other side, and then adds itself to the 18 that's already there. So negative 2x minus 8x gives me negative 10x. 18 plus 2 gives me 20. And last but not least, again, we need to divide both sides here by the coefficient because the negative 10 and the x here are grouped together by multiplication. So when we divide both sides here by negative 10, that will give us a final answer here of x equals negative 2. Now, as complex as this question may be, again, we want to check it out into this equation here. Now, this is the first time we've seen this when we're doing a check, because notice that both the left side and the right side have an x. So we actually have some work to do, some more work to do for this one. So the left side of this is going to be negative 2, and in brackets x plus 1, and the right side is the 4, and then the 2x minus 3 in brackets plus 30. So in this case here, wherever there's a negative, wherever there's an x, we're going to substitute it with a negative 2. Starting off with the left side, okay, I put in the negative 2 in for the x. So negative 2 plus 1, that's going to give me negative 1, and negative 2 times negative 1, that's going to give me 2. Now, be careful when you're doing it on the right side here. So this x here is going to be replaced with a negative 2 here. So just to simplify what I have, 2 times negative 2 will give me negative 4. So in the brackets, we have negative 4 minus 3. Okay, to simplify that further, inside the brackets, negative 4 minus 3 gives me negative 7. Okay, now if we take that, okay, 4 times negative 7 will give me negative 28. Negative 28 plus 30, that's going to give me 2. So you notice the left side and the right side are exactly the same. So guess what? We know our answer is indeed correct. All right, so again, when you're solving equations for brackets, you perform the distributive property first, and we're required to gather the like terms. You simplify and you solve. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're now going to do a word problem that involves a triangle over here. And what we want to do here is just to model this so you can see how to approach a problem, how to construct an equation, and how you can use the equation to solve the problem. So determine the angle measures of the triangle picture. Now, what you need to know about this here is the fact that when you're dealing with shapes, especially triangles, okay, if you learned anything in when you learned anything in geometry, okay, you learned that the 3 angles inside a triangle add up to 180. So we're going to use that to help construct the equation for this question. So what we're going to do is exactly that. We're going to add up those 3 angles and let it equal 180. So we're going to take the 4x, the 2x, and the 3x, add them up, and then let it equal to 180. Okay? Now, on the left side, you can see that we can gather the like terms here. So we're going to add the 4x, the 2x, and 3x together here. And that's going to give me 9x. And as you can see, the 9 and the x are grouped together by multiplication. So we're going to divide both sides here because it's the opposite operation. We're going to divide both sides here by 9, which is the coefficient. And this will give us a value of x equals 20. Now, we have not completely answered this question yet because for the final part, we now need to substitute the x for each angle to solve for the actual measures of the angle. Okay, so for the first one here, we're going to take the 4 and then multiply it to 20. So that gives me 80 degrees. This 2 over here, that's going to be 2. We're going to go 2 times 20, which gives me 40. And last but not least, we're going to take this 3. Okay, multiply that by 20, which gives me 60. Now, just to do an informal check over here, just to make sure we're correct. Remember that all 3 angles inside the triangle add up to 180. So 80 plus 40, okay, 80 plus 40 is 120. 120 plus 60 is 180. So that's how we know our answer is indeed correct. All right, so that wraps up solving multi-step equations over here. So again, you can continue on working on your textbook or workbook problems, and I'll see you in the next lesson.